If you haven't sent your mud motor so hard that it catches on fire, are you even living, bro? And since I went full send on this little 670 Predator motor, it decided to do a little goodness gracious great balls of fire. And now I've got to rebuild it. So in today's video, we're going to be breaking this thing down, diagnosing what the issue was that caused the fire in the first place. So while I got this thing apart, we've got some brand spanking new, super shiny, I want to go fast Ricky Bobby parts. And once we get it all together, we are going to send it. Yeah. So why did this thing catch on fire in the first place? Well, you see what had happened was, one of our recent videos we were doing a stainless steel prop test. I was basically trying to destroy a stainless steel prop and see how much abuse it could take. If you haven't seen the video, I will link it right up here so you can go check it out. And after about the second or third test run, I was having issues where the motor didn't want to crank, and it seemed to be some kind of fuel related issue. Like the motor just couldn't get enough fuel to the carburetor. So I did all the usual stuff, make sure that the fuel pump was working, which it was, checked all the lines and the fuel filter, there was no flow problems at all. Took the carburetor apart, cleaned it, didn't see anything out of the norm. It was a brand new motor. This motor literally has about an hour of runtime on it. I did some research online, saw that a lot of people have problems with the plunger in the fuel solenoid out of the carburetor, so I yanked it out, unplugged the fuel solenoid, so that wasn't an issue. Tried to bypass the stock pulse pump that goes to this particular motor, and that wasn't the issue either. So as I continued messing around with it, the motor ended up flooding. I got one really good backfire when I was trying to crank it, and kaboom, there we went, up in flame. Well, so far, just from looking at the outside, the only thing that I can really tell that was damaged is the plastic intake tube. I think that's all that's going to be like really wrong with it. But let's get it apart anyways and just check everything and make sure that the motor is in good shape before we start hopping it up. So the engine surgery is finished, and when I took the crankcase cover off the side, the entire motor was filled with gasoline, which can only mean one thing went wrong. The flux capacitor must have overheated, which made the Canuter valve stick open, and that's why the motor caught on fire. Either that or we had a bad carb. One or the other, not really sure. But that's okay, because I got a brand new carburetor that is supposedly 1,000,000% better, and this thing should work great, I hope. It better, because it was really expensive. Now, just a quick word of caution. I am not a mechanic. I am not certified to do what I am about to do, and you should not attempt anything that I am fixing to do at home unless you're just really stupid like me. I am going to be doing some stuff to this motor that would make the Snap-on Toolman blush. This video is purely for entertainment purposes. If you blow yourself up and do something stupid, that is all on you. But definitely send me pictures. I love pictures, or video, whichever one. Thanks. All right, so our very first modification is I'm going to pull the governor out of this motor because I don't like politicians inside my motors. Say bye-bye, governor. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. And don't forget that little washer if you decide to do this. You don't want that thing rattling around in there. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is take out this oil sensor that's right here. I don't really need it because I don't like people telling me what to do. And I don't want this thing shutting my motor off when I don't want it to. So, that's coming out. And since I don't feel like drilling and tapping this block, we're just going to take this and cut it. And then same thing over here, I'm just going to cut this wire off. That way that wire will still stay in there and it's still nice and sealed up, and I ain't got to worry about tapping a block and putting a bolt and stuff in there. And the last thing to do is remove this governor wheel. It's held on by this little thing and this tiny little ring right here. Good luck getting those off. Go watch a YouTube video from someone else, because all I did was scream and cuss at it and beat it with a hammer until something broke, and now it comes off. And don't forget about this little washer here, because that would be bad if that was rolling around on the inside of the motor. That can stay. All right, so now we got all the politicians out of the motor. Let's talk about these heads. So I've already taken the valves and the valve springs out. We're going to be replacing the valve springs with some heavier duty ones so that it will allow the motor to rev to a higher RPM, since now we don't have any politicians in the motor. Now I am not going to do a true port and polish on this. I am just going to clean this head up. As you can see right down here, this is the intake side. There is a steep little drop off right here, and it is very, very, very sharp right there. Flashlight in here so you can actually see this, but right here, there's a very sharp edge that comes off this roof right here. We're going to clean all that up. The intake port itself actually looks pretty good, but there is a very, very sharp edge down there on the short side radius. So we're going to round that over real good, try to give it a little bit more smoothness to it. But you can also see that sharp edge right there on the roof of the head. Then over here on this exhaust side, we're going to kind of do the same thing. The roof up there has a really, really sharp edge that we need to get rid of, and then of course round over that short side radius and get it all cleaned up and polished real nice on that side. I did check all of the valves. It looks like they were making pretty good solid contact all the way around. None of them are bent or anything, so we should be good to reuse those. Now for this port and polish job, I am a low-tech redneck. We're going to go after this with the Dremel tool. This ain't no special Dremel tool. It's just a whatever you can find at Dollar General Dremel tool with some regular old Dremel tool rotary bits. Nothing fancy at all going on here. Now remember, I'm not doing this huge port job. I'm not going in there and hogging out the ports and taking a bunch of material out and trying to make these things huge. I'm not putting bigger valves in. I ain't doing none of that junk. All we're doing is just smoothing out the stock ports, getting that short turn radius to where it has a nice smooth curve to it, and then taking out all those little burrs and edges and the little sharp spots that we don't want that'll help the airflow better. Now as you can see, my polishing game needs a little work. I spent a little bit more time after I finished the video trying to polish these up a little bit more and get some of those deep scratches out. In all honesty, I'm really not all that worried about it. All I'm doing is building a lawnmower engine that's faster than your lawnmower engine, and I'm going to slap it on a boat and try to go really, really fast. We're not building NASCAR here, folks. It ain't got to be perfect. Now on this valve lapping job that I did here, I work on things that go pew-pew for a living. I ain't exactly got a whole bunch of valve grinding compound just laying around the shop. But what I do have is some JB Bore Magic, which works really, really well for valve grinding compound if anybody was, is interested. So I just slathered a little bit of that JB Bore Magic on each one of the valves, got my miniature toilet plunger and just sat there and, wiggled it back and forth a little bit. I didn't go crazy with it, just enough to get a nice shine on the very, very edge of the valve, make sure everything makes good contact. Now for reinstalling these valve springs, I went ultra cheap here. I went on Amazon and I found literally the cheapest valve spring compressor I could find. It was like 20 bucks shipped to the shop. It was not a whole lot of money, and it ended up working really good. Like, I think for some of our motor builds that we got coming up in the future, this thing is going to work out great. But all it is you clamp it in the vise, put your head on top of it. It's got one little part that sits on top of the valve, and the other part sits on top of your spring retainer. You compress the spring retainer down, throw them two little keepers in there with a magnet if you can get them, and if you can't, cuss and scream and throw them across the shop, and then spend 20 minutes going looking for those little bitty keepers on the other side of the shop, and then when you find them, go finish installing them, because you're going to need those. It's kind of important. But for 20 bucks, this little valve spring compressor worked great. That cheapo Amazon valve spring compressor goes with lawnmower heads like spaghetti and peanut butter. Freaking amazing. Now this hole that the old governor arm came out of is not going to be used anymore, so I used a 3/8 tap, and I found a bolt that I had just laying around with a washer, and we're going to put that in there just to block off this hole. You could use this for a crankcase vent if you want, but it already has a crankcase vent here, and it has another one up here on the front of the motor, so I don't really need a third one right there, so we're just going to put this bolt in here. And I'm going to put a little bit of this blue goopy stuff on here, and hopefully that'll help seal it up. So I've rotated the motor around to where this little timing mark is at. There's a timing mark here on the crankshaft that goes with the timing mark that is right here on the camshaft. Make sure the lifters are all slid up out of the way, and then you can slide this camshaft back in place. Double check one more time that the timing dots are lined up on the camshaft and on the crankshaft. With that back on, now we can throw on our head gasket, which I've already got on here. Head is on, and then we'll go ahead and just throw our bolts in there and hand tighten them down for right now. And once I get this done, we'll come back and do the torquey thing and put them to the special specs and all that kind of good stuff. And we're ending up at 26 foot-pounds. And we slide our push rods in, make sure they are sitting on top of the lifters. And tighten down these set screws to hold that shaft rocker in place. And then we'll move on to the other side and do the same thing. The next step is to remove the old gasket material from the crankcase and from the crankcase cover. Now, I am probably not doing this the right way, and I am sure that some internet expert engine builder, NASA space rocket surgeon is going to jump on here and down in the comment section and tell me how I'm doing it wrong. But you see, the thing is, I really don't care. What I did is I got my little air ziz wheeled angle grinder thing and put a little red Scotch Brite pad disc on it and just went to town with it. Made it all nice and slickered up. Got all that old gasket material off, and then we were ready to install the new gasket. Now, I bought this kit from performance670.com. They actually sell this little gasket making material. Now, this stuff looks like regular old RTV to me, but it says high torque on the bottle, so I am assuming that it is for these, as I roll my eyes, super high compression, monster horsepower lawnmower engines like I'm building right here. And they also include in the kit 2 shims that you're going to need, one for the crankshaft and one for the camshaft. The old shims that came out of the motor are sized for a paper gasket or a felt gasket, whatever you want to call it. Those shims are going to be too big once you go to a RTV type gasket. So the 2 shims that are in the package, you need to put those on first. Go ahead and spread your RTV on there. I like to use just a little bit, like a very small bead all the way around the edge, and then I smear it out with my fingers. Let it dry for about an hour so it's good and tacked up, and then go and put your crankcase cover on with all the special fancy torque specs that you're supposed to use, and then you should be good to go. Now, it does say to let it cure for 24 hours, which I did, so just make sure that you read the package and do what the package says. Next thing up is going to be replace this oil filter while I am thinking about it, because if not, I will forget. And we're going to be replacing it with this Performance 670 oil filter. It looks like it is about the same, but because it has the Performance sticker on the side, this should give at least about 12.5 more horsepower. And don't forget to lube that up. So now it is time for our really cool custom exhaust that is going on here. Now you can get your hands on one of these from my good friend Mr. Jeff Clines over on Facebook. I will leave his information down in the description box below to where you can contact him on the book face if you're interested in getting one of these. Now here's the thing though, because Jeff is a really busy guy and we don't want to clog up his inbox with, 1,000 questions about this exhaust system, we've come up with a special passphrase that you're going to need to use when you message him so that he knows you're serious about getting one of his exhaust systems. And that passphrase is, Mr. Coach Clines, I love unicorns. So if you go over on the old book face and you want to get yourself one of these super cool exhausts, I cannot wait to hear how this thing sounds. Just look up Mr. Jeff Clines, I got his information down below, and send him a message with the passphrase, Mr. Coach Clines, I love unicorns, and he will get you hooked up. And the new exhaust is going to have these 2 brackets right here that come off of the actual exhaust pipe and bolt to this top cover, so he includes some bolts there. And then the last thing to do for the exhaust is to throw the muffler on. And then it comes with these fancy little springs here that will help hold this on, and I need a screwdriver. And there we go. That looks pretty cool. So I did search all over the interwebs trying to look for the correct coil gaps for this particular motor, and they came anywhere from like 8,000s all the way up to like 20,000s and some other crazy crap. So we're gonna go old school and just use a business card. Now this new Mikuni Carb Adapter that we got from Performance 670 Comes with this little set screw that goes in here and blocks off this little hole so that we don't get any air leaks through there. So we'll go ahead and throw that in place. And my gaskets are still in pretty good shape, so I'm just going to reuse the gaskets and the little spacer that came with the original motor. Line all those up, and then our carb goes on facing that way. And they include some shiny new bolts, so we'll throw those in. And since everything comes from the land of sweet and sour chicken, 5mm is the size wrench that you need to tighten these down. And I was able to find the torque spec for these. It is right there. Just so you can see that again, the torque spec for these is there, good to go. Then on the back side, you've got this little rubber-ish adapter. I think that's what this thing is made out of. And it's going to bolt on right here. Performance 670 sent some bolts to go with it. And as with everything made in egg roll land, they come with a different size bolt, and this one is 6mm. Because it would just be so difficult to put in a bolt with the same size as this one, but thank God for Harbor Freight. I've got extra tools. And torque spec is about right there. And right there. And then the last thing to do is bolt on our new Mikuni carburetor, and it just slides into this thingy-mabobber, just like so. And then, I'm not sure what these extra hoses are for, but they look like they could replace the hoses in my hard hat that holds the 2 beer cans so I can drink while I'm fishing. So I'm just going to hold on to them for now. I may need those later. Sounds like it's going to work good. And last but not least, we're going to bolt on this little air filter, you know, for protection. And this carburetor came with no instructions, so I'm going to go do a little internet research and see how I hook the gas line up to it, because I don't know anything about this. And just to do something a little different, I took the old airbox cover and I hacked off the front of it and just cut off these little corner pieces. So now I should be able to reuse this. Cool. So for this motor, we are going to be running Royal Purple motor oil because it's purple, and go Tigers. All right, it's the moment of truth. So for those of you that are real tech savvy, you'll notice that I did not put billet rods or a billet flywheel in this engine. And I also did not put an aftermarket cam in it. And here is why. Performance 670 was completely out of stock of their aftermarket cams, so I wasn't gonna waste time pulling the rods out and putting billet rods in right now when I don't really plan on going over 5,000 RPMs anyways. And from what I understand from others who have built motors similar to this, as long as you keep this motor under 5,500 RPMs, the stock rods will hold up just fine. Now later on, I do plan on coming back, breaking this motor down, putting the Performance 670 cam in it, the billet rods, and I'm also going to Cerakote everything on the motor so that we got it all nice in one color and looking really cool. But that is a video for another day. So we've already got this thing bolted on the Project Pocket Rocket. It is ready to go do a little test run as soon as I get some of this wiring stuff figured out. So that will be our next video. This edition of the Haters Corner is brought to you in part by Haterade and Copenhagen Spit Bottles, because if you have never in your life accidentally grabbed a Coke bottle thinking it was just Coke in it and taken a giant swig, you don't know how much you value your life, because that's happened to me. It sucks. And if you're not familiar with the Haters Corner, what we like to do in every video is stand in a corner and see who was the most butthurt in the comments section over the last couple of weeks. And because we know that people are very sensitive on the interwebs, we just call them Scooter and don't use their real names. So our first Scooter comes from my DIY how to build a transom out of plywood video. Scooter writes, "Did you use plywood for the transom? Did you even watch the freaking video?" The whole video was about me cutting plywood up and making a freaking transom. Oh my God, people are just, woo! Our second Scooter comes from my video that I talked about how to do DIY paint strippers. Scooter writes, "Cool, comma, but your bloopers just stretch out length, so get more time, which is no value to me." I'll tell you what's a great value, Scooter. Saving up your money towards your tuition, because it looks like you could definitely use some value in a tuition program. And jeez, good Lord, I know that I talk crazy, but sentence structure, it's a thing. You should definitely check it out. And then our last Scooter, I don't even know which freaking video he posted this on, but Scooter writes, "Positive name recognition takes 1 second. Negative recognition is forever. Multiple ad interruptions so far, ... Advertisements louder than video, ... I will not support any advertisers whose ads does not have the opportunity to opt out immediately, yada yada." And he goes on this long rant about YouTube ads. Scooter, last time I checked, I do not run the complaint department for YouTube. So if you got a problem with the ads on YouTube, which by the way, you're getting free video content that you can watch at your leisure whenever you want for free, and all it costs you is 5 seconds of watching the beginning of an ad, which you're allowed to skip most of the time. So what are you complaining about? And anybody that's been on YouTube for longer than 12 seconds knows that's part of free YouTube, is you gotta watch the first 5 seconds of an ad, or maybe like a whole 10-second ad, and oh my God, this is such an inconvenience. But if any of you would be so kind and you want to let Scooter know, you can go down in the comments section and tell him where he can go complain to YouTube. Or you can let him know that you would rather just accidentally watch him trip into a wood chipper. Whichever one works for me. Here's to you, Scooter. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, do not forget we have our t-shirts, hats, stickers, hoodies, and all that kind of fun stuff. The description below this video has the link for that if you want to buy it. And we got sizes of shirts from teeny tiny all the way up to oh my God and everything in between. We even have those exclusive sizes that a lot of guys are looking for, like the extra medium and the large. You know, for the ones that like to wear clothes that look like they shop at the Baby Gap. We're going to roll those bloopers here for you in just a second, but first let us always remember, money cannot buy happiness, but it can buy you a boat. Bye, guys. This thing was not made to be sat on. It is uncomfortable. And the next thing we're going to do is pull this. Oh my God, really? I am in the middle of filming a video. Who is calling me? The valve springs, we're going to valve springs. Do not use a mud motor for a lawn chair. This sucks. Our second Scooter on video, or whatever. I should stop drinking. Plan on getting the aftermarket cam from what is it? Performance 670. Oh, I always want to sing that song. It's like, there's a tear in my beer. I don't know why, just whatever.